Just kidding.
Should I point down?
Yeah.
Is that annoying?
No.
What?
All the workout videos, they're like,
No,
comment.
I love
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jasmine Conrad. I am the Communications Associate here at the ACLU of Nebraska, and we are kicking off our first conversation series on issues affecting people in Nebraska and in general. And I'm here with Rose Godinez, our Legal and Policy Counsel at the ACLU of Nebraska, who is lead on racial justice issues. How's it going, Rose?
Good. Thanks for having me.
So today we're talking about critical race theory.
Yeah.
Critical race theory has been making headlines across the nation, and now it's made its way to Nebraska as well.
Mm-hmm.
So what is critical race theory?
Such a good question, because I think so many people are conflating issues and issue areas. But critical race theory at its core is a legal analytical framework that was created back in the 1970s, 1980s, where legal scholars of color were questioning the systems and were wondering, why is this happening more so to this group of people rather than this group of people? So it analyzes racism and how it is embedded in American society and in our fabric. And then more generally, it's a way of analyzing racism that's systemic versus individual bias or prejudice.
So why do you think some 2022 governor candidates are talking about critical race theory, and the way they're talking about it is in opposition of having CRT in higher education? Why do you think that is?
Okay, so I think it started back when the Trump administration was actually taking some action against diversity training. He was conflating the definitions between being patriotic and acknowledging racism and the history that this country has. So I think that's where it started. Luckily, that executive order that President Trump had signed was found to violate the First Amendment, and then also President Biden has now rescinded that order. The consequences of that executive order have continued to filter through to states across the country, and including Nebraska, where the University of Nebraska Board of Regents is now considering a proposal to oppose any teaching of critical race theory.
Cool. Well, not cool, but cool. So let's talk about that for a minute. So the University of Nebraska, a regent there who's also a candidate for governor for 2022, has brought a resolution forward that would ban critical race theory in higher education. We've been talking about this, but seems weird for like an educator to ban something that, as you said, is really an acknowledgement of our past. Mm-hmm. How do you think something like this would affect, like ethnic studies or, African American studies programs if you can't talk about systemic equality?
So true, and that's spot on. I mean, something that you'll probably recognize too as a person of color, having been in public schools, is you already don't get enough education on your race and the history of slavery, Jim Crow laws, colonialism. At this point, you still don't get enough education. So you can imagine the consequences of that going into higher education. So higher education has been defined by the courts and has been widely marketed as a marketplace of ideas and a place where you can exchange ideas and really critique and go hone in on issues that are difficult to talk about. So you're ready for society in the future and your career in the future, and have to discuss these issues with a diverse population. So as is, there is not sufficient education on systemic racism. And now kids that go into college, whether you want to study ethnic studies or just generally any course that discusses these important issues, you're going to have a chilling effect if you oppose or ban critical race theory. People, both professors and students, will feel like they can't discuss race because they are going to be sanctioned in some way. And that goes beyond just discussions of ethnic studies in particular, which is what's really concerning, because in just a plain history class, if you're discussing slavery or Jim Crow laws or colonialism, you're going to, at some point, discuss race. It'll be inevitable. And at that point, the professor or the student will have to make a question of whether they're going to continue that conversation or stop it. And really that's a loss for all of us as students, professors, and the community.
So we talked about banning critical race theory and its potential impact on ethnic studies and discussions of race and slavery. What do you think the impact would be on higher education as a whole as it concerns students' rights?
It definitely affects academic freedom and the ability to disagree with institutional or government policies. And that's something that as Americans to the core we should be familiar with. There's nothing more American than dissenting to a policy or a government law.
What kind of message do you think people are sending by saying, in general, I don't want to teach anti-racism in my classroom?
They're sending a message, a clear message to students of color that everything they are experiencing in the moment or they experience in their future is not acknowledged. And that can affect students at their core and at a time where you are most vulnerable, when you're training to become an adult, training to become a professional in this country, and to not understand why certain things are happening to you can affect the entire outcome.
Beyond students of color, what do you think the value is of critical race theory being taught to white students or any student that's just not a student of color?
That's a great question. I think it's just as important, not only for students of color, but white students to be exposed to the critical race theory, because it is a system that we all live in. It's not just one group of people. And we're all going to make these decisions in the future. And what's particularly important here is that these students are the future, are our future governors, our future legislators, who will be creating policies and hopefully for everyone, not just to benefit a particular group of people.
What can people do if they really want to show that they oppose this new proposition to ban critical race theory in schools?
There are many ways that you can be heard on this resolution. You can soon see a petition at the ACLU of Nebraska website that you can sign opposing any prohibition on critical race theory. And then you can also show up to the meeting on August 13th and voice your opinion then.
Thank you, Rose. We hope that you enjoyed this video, and we'll be having more conversations coming to you soon. If you have an idea for a topic that you think we should cover, please comment below and do subscribe.